This is an application called Playnite. This is a very popular way to access all of your games in one location. Your Steam games, your Epic games, GOG, your emulators, Uplay if you happen to have that, Battle.net. Is it still called Battle.net? I don't know. Whatever it's called. Basically, everywhere you might have games in this one unified interface. It doesn't eliminate the need for the stores, as the stores also act as DRM, but it does give you one easy way to see everything on your system. This is actually licensed under the MIT license. This is an open source project. The only issue is it's only available on Windows. And back in 2017, someone opened an issue about this. Make cross-platform macOS and Linux for those that have Linux or Mac and not Windows. Now keep in mind, this is a few years after Steam for Linux was released, and also the OG Steam machines, but Proton was still about a year away. So this guy was... You were here early. Not planned in the near future. See number 38 for details, that is this one over here. I will leave this open for other people to see. Also, it's not a definite no, it's just not possible at the moment. Of course, when he said this, a bunch of people be like, ooh, no, grr, how dare you not implement something that I want you to implement. It was a bit of a technical challenge because of how the dev decided to build it. The biggest blocker is the absence of WPF on these platforms, which is used for the GUI in Playnite. I'm currently not planning to use anything else because there isn't any mature toolkit with C# and modern binding support, with only Eto and Avalonia getting there slowly. So I guess it's up to Microsoft to release WPF as a cross-platform toolkit. Now, a lot of people are like, how dare you pick WPF to create your application? This person made it at a time where gaming on Linux and gaming on macOS, just macOS a little bit, Linux a little bit, but Windows was the gaming platform. Keep in mind, this is before Proton, right? You were not gaming on Linux at this point, outside of a couple of weirdos running native games. Like, even the Steam machines, right? The Steam machines were an absolute flop originally. The new ones, different situation entirely. But the original Steam machines, utter mess. So it makes sense why you'd build a gaming application to game on Windows. And also you might think, oh, I could just run the application under Wine because this needs to integrate with the various stores on your system. That wouldn't work. Like, you need to have integration with the system properly. And at the time, there were alternatives like Xamarin and things like that, but Playnite relies a lot on plugins, and if you're going to have two different toolkits between the Windows and the Linux version, that would create so many problems. Plugin devs would have to go and try to either support both platforms or just say specifically this only works on one of them or it's only tested on one of them, and who knows what's going to break, and that creates a whole mess. I understand why the dev, if they built it with WPF, would take this stance. I would have preferred for them to, not build it like this, but it makes sense why they did at the time. And because people were just demanding changes, it ended up being locked because just demanding, hey, I want this to change, I want this to change, I want this to change. Like, they weren't adding any feedback, they weren't explaining how it could be done. There was just nothing to add here. Back in February, we actually had an update though. Upcoming major release Playnite 11 will be on modern open source and multi-platform .NET runtime, but will still only use WPF-based UI. This is for several reasons. One of the main ones being that Avalonia's developer experience is not, in my opinion, good enough to be used in projects like Playnite. Now, what is Avalonia? Because this has been mentioned a number of times. The future of .NET UI. Build faster, ship sooner, with technologies trusted by Unity, JetBrains, and hundreds of thousands of apps. Basically, it's a cross-platform way to run your WPF applications on platforms outside of Windows. And it is supported by a lot of very big names. I don't trust Boeing to build planes, but hey, maybe they're good at building software. Playnite heavily depends on community-made extensions and themes often developed by hobbyist developers, not professionals, and Avalonia is simply not user-friendly as much as I would like it to be for us. We are 100% moving to Avalonia at some point in the future. It's just not going to be with the Playnite 11 release. So current plan is to release Playnite 11, continue developing it for Windows only, and once Avalonia's developer experience improves, they are promising major tool improvements with their upcoming Accelerate program. I will start porting Playnite 11 to Avalonia. Once we have polished the Windows version of Avalonia-based Playnite, I'll start working on the Linux version. I don't want to make a just straight port of the Windows version, it just wouldn't be good enough. I would really like to have Linux-specific features available on release, like Wine and Proton-specific features, Epic and GOG plugins using Legendary and Heroic GOG DLs respectively, and stuff like that. To sum this up, the Linux version is definitely something I plan working on in the future. It's just going to happen later than originally planned. As for macOS, who knows? Who cares? But a few days back, another comment was made. 2025 Update 2. I'm planning to move to Linux in 2026 after Playnite 11 is done, and since Playnite is my personal blocker for the move, I will try to make some Linux version in 2026. You know what? For all the reasons to get a Linux port ready, this is probably as good as any. I make this software, I need this software, I want the software to work on Linux, I'm going to make the software work on Linux. It's definitely not going to be a fully featured version on parity with the Windows version, and probably desktop mode only, but something daily drivable with Linux-specific features, Wine and Proton integration, for example. Without that, it's literally useless. If that goes well, I'll start looking into Avalonia porting proper, say I mentioned in the previous updates. So getting all of this work done, getting plugins working, and basically making it a full cross-platform application. Now, I have not spoken to the developer, but I would assume a big part of the reason why they're actually thinking of moving to Linux, probably partially because of the Steam Machine announcement and, you know, Linux gaming is only going to get better and better and better, and then in conjunction with the state that is modern Windows, and, well, I know a lot of people in the tech space who are like, you know what? I'm actually going to give this Linux thing a try. I really don't want to deal with Windows 11. Now, obviously not everyone, but it sounds like this might be part of the reason why they're also doing so. So hopefully for the people that really want this, this actually comes out in 2026 and there's something actually usable. In the meantime, however, there are some Linux alternatives you can use. I'm not going to say replacement because none of these really feel like a full replacement. They, you know, they work on Linux, they do a lot of the stuff that you might want, but a lot of people really want specifically Playnite and the set of features it has. However, again, there are things you can use whilst you wait. None of these are bad projects, they just don't do every single thing that you might want from Playnite. One of these applications is cartridges. This is part of the GNOME Circle. This means it is a libadwaita application. Now, I've spoken my piece on libadwaita many times. I don't encourage anyone to use them. I personally try to avoid this toolkit as much as possible. However, if you're someone in the GNOME ecosystem, this does exist and you can go and use it. Or you can use it outside of that if you're not as bothered by it as I happen to be. Next is Pegasus. This advertises itself more on the retro emulated games, things like that. But you can integrate your Steam library as well. That is also a thing you can do. If you care about style, maybe this one is a little bit rough around the edges, we will say. Especially a bit rougher than cartridges because it does fit in with that GNOME style. And especially a bit rougher than Playnite is. However, this is a relatively popular option. And in some sense, Lutris also kinda fits the bill. Usually this is used for more individual titles rather than integrating your entire library into it. but you can access your library through it as well. That is a thing you can do. I know some people do it, and you can also do all your emulation stuff and all that through it. There has been some discussion on an improved UI for using it more cleanly on the Steam Deck. That hasn't happened yet. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. It was something the dev was talking about a couple of years ago, but even so, Lutris is a very popular option. Anyone on Linux, I probably don't need to tell you about Lutris. Another one I probably don't need to tell you about is the Bottles application. This is also a libadwaiter application. I already said my piece on libadwaiter and why I'm not a fan of it. The dev is working on a new UI for it, so that problem eventually goes away. This has ways to integrate stores into it as well, so even though the main thing isn't about that, that library functionality is still kind of there. Again, it's not as pretty as what you get from using Playnite. It doesn't have all the metadata stuff and all of this stuff people really like from Playnite, but it's still a very popular choice. Bottles is a lot more about really heavily customizing your wine environment and making the game or the application run as smoothly as possible. And of course, we also have the Heroic Games Launcher. Now, looks-wise, it does have the closest feel to Playnite. The main issue, though, is it doesn't integrate everything into it. You do get things like Epic, GOG, and Amazon Prime Games, but it doesn't integrate the Steam stuff. So, you just don't get everything, right? Like, if it integrated that, honestly, this would probably be the best replacement. And there have been discussions of the introduction of Steam, but they tend to get, like, really aggressive very quickly, and it's likely not going to happen. It's not clear why there seems to be this sort of objection to doing so. It's one thing to say, hey, we're not really interested in doing so right now, here's why, but there's not really been a clear answer for why all of these other stores, but not Steam. Even with that limitation, though, it is still quite a popular option, but like this person says, people do want Playnite on Linux, and if it did bring in Steam, it basically would be Playnite on Linux. Now, there are other options available like ESDE, Emulation Station Desktop Edition. We also have Open Gamepad UI and Launchbox. There are other things that have existed in the past as well, like Game Hub. This is now marked as archived. I know some people were using this, and when I originally saw this, I thought this actually looked pretty cool and could have become something like Playnite. I know a lot of people were kind of thinking that was the direction it was going. I don't know exactly why it was stopped. Probably just because the dev didn't want to keep working on it? I don't really know. Let's see if we can find something. Honestly, from what I can see, it just looks like the dev abandoned it. The dev got busy, and last update was 3 years ago. I didn't realize it was that long ago, because I found this, I want to say it was more recently than that, but I don't know. I kind of wish this kept going. If someone wanted to fork this and keep it going, there's a pretty good baseline already here. But the problem with all of these applications is whilst they are all good, and whilst they're doing a lot of the things people want, they all miss something that people want from Playnite. And this is why people really want Playnite on Linux, because it does everything. It brings in everything. It has a plugin system, so if you want to integrate other stores that are not directly supported by the application, you can also do that. You can even bring in things that are not game stores, like AnyList, and use it just as a generic metadata library application. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. And there's support for just a bunch of other random things like Minecraft launcher stuff, whatever Big Fish Games is, DL site. Now, if you know, you know. If you don't, well, I'm not going to explain DL site to anyone who is not already informed about it. There's just a bunch of other things, Game Jolt and everything else you could possibly want, and if it's not here, well, it's a plugin. There's a plugin system, so you can bring in whatever you want. And I think the UI is very useful, but to really make it actually valuable on Linux, I do agree that it needs to integrate this, like, Wine and Proton support. Maybe not as much as something like Bottles, where you can tweak every nice little thing where, you know, I think that's a bit too much. But at least as much as what you get with Steam, definitely as much as what you get with Steam, being able to select different versions, being able to bring in other versions very easily, being able to use things besides Proton, like a DOS box for older games, and maybe, like Lutris, have some easy way to configure basic options so you don't necessarily have to pass in, you know, config environment variables for every single thing you want to set. I think that by itself would be enough to make it valuable. The Playnite interface and a nice way to work with Proton. And it sounds like that's what the dev actually has in store. But what do you think? Are you excited to see Playnite on Linux? Are you the kind of person who would actually use an application like this? Or do you just not really care about the collection of stores that are out there? I would love to know. So, let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Starly Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and tell me, do you game?